EFI University is hosting a new class called Essentials of Operating a Shop. If you're interested in learning how to run your shop more efficiently, this class is for you. The next course will be held in Orlando, Florida on April 16th. For more details, go to EFI101.com and look for the Essentials of Operating a Shop class. Be sure to use the coupon code DIFAL for $50 off.
This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
Whether you put something on Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook or somewhere, tag it. So leave people digital breadcrumbs so they know how to come back to your company or your business. Because how many times have you seen just a crazy looking car or something wacky or wild or amazing in your Facebook news feed, and there's not much information on it, and you wonder where it came from? I'm really big on leaving breadcrumbs for people.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
I've got a really cool guest with me today. His name is Jim McIlvaine. He's from Optima Batteries. He's their e-care manager, which is his self-titled role. He is largely their social media guy, and he attends all the events that I've been to, so you see him. Jim is a very, very tall guy, so you cannot miss him. He is a former NBA basketball player, and now he's kind of in the car scene, but I'll let him introduce himself. So, Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. So, Jim, give us a background of yourself. Kind of tell us who you are. How did you get involved with cars, and how did you get started with Optima?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin. Went to St. Catherine's High School, which did not have a shop class, but I was always into cars. My best friend growing up, Tony Garbo's family, owns the oldest Lincoln Mercury dealership in Wisconsin. And Tony was fortunate enough to get his hands on a blown 71 Comet GT when we were still in high school. So I got bit pretty early by the bug. Sister Rotarius, who we affectionately referred to as Sister Goodwrench, came closest to teaching anything resembling a shop class. It was called Know Your Car, and Tony and I ended up being it started out with a larger group, but Tony and I ended up being the last two guys in the class. And when the accreditation group came in, they ended up shutting the class down because it didn't have any college preparatory value. And so that was kind of the end of it for a while. Tony and I were still into cars. I'd go out to Great Lakes Dragway all the time and watch the mud drags and the asphalt and stuff on the asphalt side. And then I went off to college. I went to Marquette, graduated with a degree in communications and an interdisciplinary minor in business. Still had the car bug through college. I went to school. What did I have when I got there? I had a 79 Bronco Ranger XLT, and it had like 33-inch mutters on it. And it was on its last legs. And my sophomore year, I ended up buying a truck from one of the guys on the wrestling team who needed to sell his truck to pay his tuition because they weren't full scholarship. And so that was an 84 F-150 with a 6-inch lift on it and a dirty, mean, and nasty bug shield on the front, which I wasn't crazy about, but too lazy to take it off. Had that for a year, and it had various issues with it, as sometimes a lot of lifted trucks do. And so then I finally decided to buy a new truck because I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go to college to play basketball. So I didn't have to use the money I had saved for college. And I bought a 92 Chevy Silverado, ordered it. It was an extended cab with a 350 and a 5-speed manual, and bucket seats, which is a really weird, rare combination. And I still have that truck today. It's got over 200,000 miles on it. And if you see me at events in the Midwest, there's a good chance I'll be driving that truck, and never got rid of it.
So do you go off-roading with them?
That particular truck is a 2-wheel drive truck.
Okay, so no.
It's actually open differential 1-wheel drive. Because by the time I was on my third truck, I had kind of gotten the off-roading and the mudding stuff out of my system, and was looking at the expense of repairs on 4-wheel drive vehicles and lifted vehicles, and said I'd had enough of that. I want something that'll get 20 miles to the gallon on the highway, but still has some power. And so I didn't even get a 373 rear end. I got a 308, and the thing did get 20 and still does. If I'm easy on the miles, I'll get 20 miles to the gallon on that thing going on the highway with a 5-speed manual.
Awesome. And so you got a scholarship into college. And
Yep.
where did you go to school?
Marquette University in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. Okay. And what was your degree in there?
It was communications with an interdisciplinary minor in business. And I started out in the School of Business, but because of the demands of basketball, it became apparent to me during my junior year that I wasn't on schedule to graduate in 4 years, which was really important for me because I felt like once I left college, I was never going to go back. So I switched over to the School of Communications, had enough credits in the School of Business to get an interdisciplinary minor, and then wrapped things up in communications, which for what I do now actually turned out to be a pretty good thing because I probably used my communications degree and the knowledge I learned from the classes at Marquette more than most of my classmates ever will.
Yeah, that's actually very kind of rare where you go to school for a degree and then actually apply it, it seems like.
Well, that's why I was so reluctant to leave the School of Business. I just didn't see myself after basketball being in a job that didn't involve business and the principles of accounting and finance and economics and marketing and all the different classes you take in the School of Business. And so I really didn't want to leave, but at the same time, it took me a long time I barely got through statistics. And that was frustrating because I had classmates who never studied and got A's on all the tests, and I studied my brains out to barely pass. So I didn't want to leave the School of Business, but I didn't want to leave 4 years of Marquette without a degree either. And communications came much easier to me. The public speaking was never an issue or a concern. The small group communications, the argumentation classes I really enjoyed. And I even enjoyed the logic classes, which were kind of like math with words.
Okay. And so you were playing basketball, and I'm assuming as soon as you graduated, you went straight into the NBA? Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, I was drafted in June after my senior year by the Washington Bullets, and played well enough in the summer league there to get offered a guaranteed contract for 1 year, and I parlayed that into an offer after my first year with the Minnesota Timberwolves for another year, and the Bullets ended up matching that because I was a restricted free agent. So I went back and played another year in Washington. And then after my second contract, I was an unrestricted free agent and signed a 7-year deal with Seattle, who later moved to Oklahoma City. I played 2 years in Seattle and then was traded to New Jersey. And then I played 3 more years in New Jersey. And then I had 2 years left on my contract, and I had just ruptured my left calf and partially tore my left Achilles. And one of my teammates, Jamie Fike, had recently went in for surgery before the season even ended that same season because he had bone spurs underneath his Achilles that were too painful for him to play with. And so he'd have to retire if he didn't have the surgery, but at the same time, having the surgery on his Achilles might effectively end his career, and it actually did. And so the Nets had to pay out his entire contract. And I was about 2 weeks away from coming back from my calf tear and Achilles tear when the season ended. And I think the Nets were worried that I'd come into training camp and rupture it first day and be done, and then they'd have to pay the full amount of my remaining contract. They didn't want to take a chance on it. And I was at a point in my career where I was breaking or tearing something every year and going into the off season and really calling it the surgery season to fix whatever I'd done to myself. And so it cost me several $1 million, but in terms of quality of life long term, I think it was the right decision. I know it was the right decision for the franchise because they ended up getting things turned around and made it to the at least the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe even further than that, not long after I retired. But I had the benefit of spending a lot of time around retired players throughout my career, and it's kind of a window into your future when you look at those guys and the way they move around at 40 and 50 and 60 years old, and then you start asking yourself if you really want to keep doing that to your body and keep playing basketball until you physically can't play anymore? Or do you want to end kind of on your terms? And I think a lot of guys keep playing until they can't play anymore just because they don't know what else they're going to do with their life. And a lot of them end up going back into coaching or basketball in some other capacity. But I kind of had my sights set already on doing something in the automotive aftermarket. At that point in my basketball career, I had already been a contributing editor for a couple of years for a couple of different car magazines, which is something that I picked up on when I moved to New Jersey, where several of the magazines were based.
So you were writing articles or editing articles for the magazines?
I was writing articles and doing event coverage. I got to know Johnny Hunkins, who was the editor at GM High Tech Performance at the time when I moved to New Jersey, because their offices were not that far from where I lived. It was kind of on my way to work. And I got to be pretty good friends with Chris Frezza and Jason Debler, who run CamaroZ28.com. And Johnny Hunkins had popped onto the message forums there and had started posting things. And he had sometimes a very direct way of communicating with people that kind of made people question, is this guy for real? Is he really the editor? And so Chris and Jason asked me to check him out, and he was. And we got to be friends, and he started reading some of the things I was posting on forums and asked me if I wanted a job working for the magazine. I said, that's great, but, with my background of, Sister Goodwrench, I said, I don't know anything about cars. And he said, that's okay. I was working for Best Buy before I started writing for magazines. And really, when you do event coverage, it's who, what, where, why, when. And he taught me, I spent a lot of time with him, kind of a work-study program with him in the off-season. We'd take trips down to Galveston, Houston area for 10 days because there's a lot of fast fourth-gen F-bodies down there. And so we'd gather up, we'd do a winter trip like that and gather up a lot of cars to put into features in the magazine. And so he really taught me the ropes of the magazine business in terms of the writing side and the photography side especially. He's a phenomenal photographer. And so it was a great experience for me to be introduced to the industry by Johnny, and I'm eternally indebted to him. And he went to Popular Hot Rodding, which got shuttered and shut down, and now I think he's at one of the Mopar titles for 10.
And so you're playing basketball, and obviously then you still have an interest for cars and trucks, and so you were actually playing, and this is still your hobby, I guess, huh? So you just kind of parlayed it into a role after you're done with basketball?
Yeah, it's funny how the NBA works, at least. The equipment managers get, I think, probably a payoff from the DuPont Auto Registry, because they'll ship a box of the registries to the team, and that guy will put them out in everybody's lockers and make sure that they're on the planes, so the guys read them on the planes, and they've got the other DuPont registries for properties and all that kind of stuff. And the guys in the NBA end up kind of magazine racing each other. They look in the back of Car and Driver and compare 0 to 60 times of the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis and the different cars that they own. And I'm sitting in the back of the bus, betting guys $100 that I can beat them in a 0 to 30 foot race in whatever Ferrari they want, and I'll race on foot. And I said, I get the hit, and they didn't know what the hit is. But I knew, I could beat them 30 feet because they're not a lot of them weren't that great drivers. And so I came at it from a different angle. I ended up purchasing a brand new, it was a 99 Z28 Camaro convertible, had it drop shipped to Bud's Chevy in Ohio, and they sent it over to Lingenfelter and had them put a 383. I think it was the first LS1 F-body that they stroked because I actually tried to get one of the I think it was a 1997 Hearst Trans Am package that they had built, but there was a transmission strike, and so they stopped producing those cars, and I couldn't get my hands on one. So I picked a really rare color, bright green metallic, because my wife wanted a green convertible, and I got the 6-speed and sent it to Lingenfelter, and that was kind of the first fun car that I bought.
Okay, and so after basketball, kind of take us from basketball to where you're at now. Where did you go from there?
So I was doing event coverage and feature stories. And in fact, the first one I did was on Fred Dreyer's 9C1 Caprice. And I actually rode in the car and met his mechanic in between a Lakers-Clippers game when I was out in Santa Monica. And I just started doing more of that. I got to know the editors at some of the other magazines. Evan Smith was over at Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords at the time, which is in the same office as GM High Tech. And then I got to meet the guys at Super Chevy and Cameron Evans, who's at Popular Hot Rodding. And so I was kind of Midwest-based when there weren't a lot of folks in the Midwest, and now Rob McGaffin's in the Midwest, and so he can shoot a lot for the magazines and then let somebody else write it up, or he can write it up. But it was nice to be centrally located when the magazines at that time were primarily in New Jersey and Southern California. I did more events. I was doing Power Tour and the B-Body Nationals, and I was going to open road races, and it was still basically as a contributing editor, which is a fancy way of saying I was a freelancer. And I had an offer from Source Interlink to go full time, but I just didn't want to commit myself to that. I didn't have to work. I did it because I enjoyed it. And our health insurance situation was good enough that I didn't really want to commit myself to a job like that, and didn't know how I'd be able to juggle a schedule like that working out of the house when the magazine was so far away. So I just continued to do that freelance for a long time, and through that, and I'd go to track days at Road America. I met Cam Douglas, who is the director of marketing and product development for Optima batteries, which had been based in Colorado, and then when Johnson Controls acquired them, they moved their headquarters to Milwaukee. And so Cam is a lifelong car guy, and he was up at Road America. He ran a CTS-V up there one year, and then he had a really kind of well-known second-gen Camaro. It was a green car before with white stripes that I think ended up selling to the folks at Spectre. And then he had a C5 Corvette that was running one year, and I think he blew it up, which is how he and I really got to know each other, because I have a cabin with a big garage right next to Road America, and he needed to get his car back to Milwaukee, and I said, I've got a trailer, I can take it down there for you. It's only like an hour away. And he thought that was just so cool, like, you really don't mind? I'm like, no, I enjoy driving. At that point, I had been trailering my boat out from Wisconsin to Lake Mead to rent a houseboat and go water skiing out on the lake for a week at a time with a bunch of friends. And so I really enjoyed driving, and was telling him that. And he said, we run stuff out to SEMA all the time. Would you be interested in helping with that? And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. And so the next thing I know, I'm driving this big red monster truck, towing some other show car. And then he'd fly me home from SEMA and then fly me back out to SEMA at the end of the week. And I'd drive it back, and he'd, sleep mostly because he was all worn out from SEMA. But we ended up talking a lot about Optima and what their challenges were digitally. It's a relatively small group and always has been, but it's a business to consumer facing group, which is a little unique in the Johnson Controls world, where a lot of what they do is business to business as they make batteries that retailers sell and put their labels on and that kind of thing. As we spent time over the years talking about what was going on with the Optima brand, he decided that he'd be interested in having me do some work for them. And I had been doing some, I guess I call it content farming. I had taken photos of his Corvette, and another guy from Optima, Steve Kepler, had a black one, Cam had a silver one. And so I'd done some photography work for them there. And then I also did some photography work for them at the open road races out in Nevada, and sold some of that to the magazines, and got them some additional exposure for those events. And so he kind of said, I think we're going to get more serious about what we're doing online. And this was about 2009. And he asked me to come on in a part-time role and kind of start a Facebook presence for them, start writing stories for their blog, and kind of manage their social media, which, when I first started doing it, I'd pop in on a forum and help people with some battery problems, and they kind of laughed when they saw that Optima had a Facebook page and my signature on the forum. They're like, what would a battery company need a Facebook page for? They just thought that was ridiculous. And a big part of what I did at that point was I spent a lot of time on forums. I'm registered as Optima Jim on just about every forum on the internet. It feels like it's literally over 1,000. But there's some, and it's not just Optima related, it's more battery related issues that so many companies deal with. And Cam wanted to take a proactive approach with it because at the time forums were really popular, and a lot of conversations were taking place there, and they were visible in search. And you got people in these forums offering really terrible, dangerous advice, and nobody questioning them on it because they didn't want to get into some kind of dispute. But people are saying, drop your battery if it stops working, because then it'll shake up the insides, and not to mention it might crack the case open and spill acid all over the ground. And it just, see if it's got any charge left in it by touching the positive and negative terminals with a wrench. I mean, like really stupid advice that could really seriously hurt somebody. And then there was just a lot of other folks who had issues, and it wasn't always with Optima batteries, but just batteries in general. Like, I can't get my battery to charge. And so I kind of walked through the steps of what happened to put them in the situation that they found themselves in. And it was several years of time spent on internet forums, taking the time to go into these conversations. And some of them, honestly, 5 years later are still going on. People still find them and ask questions, and I get a lot of private messages on different forums because people are afraid to ask messages out in the public, which is fine. But it took several years of doing that before I started to see the fruits of it, because enough people saw what I posted, and everybody likes to be right on the internet, that other people started taking the advice I was offering it, and they'd share it with people and say, well, if you've got a battery that you can't recover, have you tried parallel charging it with a set of jumper cables and a good battery? Because a lot of times battery chargers won't see batteries that are discharged below 10.5 volts. And so it's like, I'm making a difference because other people are figuring this stuff out now. And it's not Jim talking about some kind of voodoo battery technique. It's kind of become generally accepted. And you see other people saying, you don't have to put a board underneath your battery if you set it down on the floor. That's 50 years ago you had to do that when batteries were made out of wood. They're all polypropylene now. So, to see other people correcting posts with the same information that I spent years providing, and people were looking at me with a raised eyebrow, it's gratifying, because at the end of the day, if you can get more life out of a battery, it's better for the environment, because you're not using as much resources to produce products that aren't necessarily needed, because there's still life left in the ones that people have, and they just didn't realize how to extract it from them.
So the technical aspect of the batteries and what you've had to deal with on all these forums, is that something that Optima had to train you with, or is that something you just kind of knew? Because that's what we find a lot of times is providing technical expertise on forums comes from a lot of experience, right? So a lot of people on the forums have a whole lot of hands-on experience. How did you get that experience?
So I probably skipped over a part of my history. When I retired from the NBA, I enrolled in the Blackhawk Technical College ASE mechanics program. And at the end of that program, you're a certified ASE mechanic. And my wife didn't like the time I was committing to going to school there, so I ended up not finishing it. But I spent, I think, a year there, more than a semester. And so I had a better basis of knowledge than just Sister Goodwrench in high school. But when Optima brought me on, they've got a great engineering team, and they kind of put me through Optima University. And it was a kind of a long and arduous process in the initial years, because what we did was I'd find this conversation, I'd put a link to it in a Word document, and I'd put in my proposed response, and I sent it to two different people. I sent it to a PR firm to have them look at it for messaging, and the tone and that kind of thing. And then we had an engineer look at everything I was putting out on the internet and make sure it was correct from a technical perspective, which led to a lot of conversations between he and I. And after a while, a lot of the issues that came up became boilerplate issues that were pretty easy to handle and had been done many times before. So but it was a long process to go through that. But I wouldn't want to do it any other way, because it really ingrains in me the correct terminology to use, and the correct procedures, and a really good understanding of how the technology works, and the science behind it. And at the end of the day, if I'm 6-7 years into this thing and I have questions I can't answer from people, I still have great resources in our engineering department that I can go to that have forgotten more about batteries than most people will ever learn, and they can pretty much answer any answer or any question that somebody might have under the sun.
Cool. So have you ever doubted yourself, kind of on the path? It's obviously a hobby, but have you ever doubted wanting to do it or do something different?
Well, it turned into a full-time job. I was only supposed to work like 20 hours a week, but I was always working 40 because there's so many forums and so many conversations. And after a couple of years, and Cam had talked to me pretty early on about going full-time. And again, I looked at what I was doing with the magazines, and I liked the flexibility and the freedom that I had in retirement from basketball, that I didn't have to work if I didn't want to, and if I wanted to go on vacation with my family, I could. But I found myself so immersed in the car culture and spending so much time doing it anyway. It's like, well, let's just make it official, and I'll go full time, and the pay is better. But it's, again, it's not the reason I do it. I do it because I really enjoy it, and I enjoy spending time with those folks, and I'm a cheapskate, and I always have been. So I always wanted to find a way. If you would have told me in high school you're going to work for a battery company when you're older, I'm like, yeah, why would I want to work for a battery company? But it turned out to be one of the greatest gigs ever, because I get to go to all these cool events and hang out with all these cool people and see all this cool stuff. And somebody's paying me to do it. They're not just paying for me to go to these events. They're paying me to actually be a part of these events, which is like the greatest gig in the world.
and you do get to see the coolest cars that have ever been made, essentially.
Oh, yeah. Every once in a while, somebody from outside the car world will, I'll be with them at a Marquette function or something like that, and they'll make a comment about a car, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's okay. Or they're like, wow, wouldn't it be cool? I said, that's my day job. The car stuff that you're talking about is what I get to do all the time, and it is really cool.
So have you had a worst experience in this at all? Dealing with the battery stuff, obviously, especially forums, people can get really nasty, especially nowadays. But give us a worst experience you've had in business.
I don't take the comments personally. There's a lot of pent-up frustration with people. And our engineering team would look at what people were saying and the way they were attacking me on some of the forums and say, I don't know how you can do this. And for me, it's business. It's not personal. And I come from a background in professional sports where you go into an arena with 18,000 people, and there's going to be people yelling and swearing at you and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so you kind of get to that point, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Apocalypse Now, but that scene where the bombs are going off everywhere, and dude's like, yeah, let's just go surfing. It just doesn't faze you. And it's funny because over the years, I've had interactions with people who initially were very abusive and vocal and angry, and you're a corporate whatever, and your batteries are awful and this and that, and they've come full circle. They've realized that there were some things going on with their specific applications that once they switched brands, they had the same problem with the next brand, and in some cases a third brand and a fourth brand. It just, because sometimes people are stubborn. They don't want to believe that there's anything on their end that's not correct, and they want to, it's easy to blame a battery because you can go get another one. It takes five minutes to put a new battery in. And then as the things I've been saying have been proven correct over time, it's like, okay, now they see the light, and some of them have done it begrudgingly and won't, be as nearly as vocal about it as they were about their displeasure with our products or me initially. But it's nice to there's some satisfaction there that what you're doing is not only making a difference, but being proven to be the correct thing to do, not just for Optima, but for the battery business as a whole, because there's so many batteries that get turned in for warranty that have nothing wrong with them. They've just been neglected or abused by their owners because they let them sit in a garage all winter, and then instead of taking the time to hook a charger up to them, they just take them in and try to get another one.
Okay. And so your role has really been long-term, so you said 2009 is kind of when you guys started your Facebook page. It's been a real long-term, plant the seed on as many forums as you can get, and obviously everything is shifting away from forums back to Facebook, or I guess I should say into Facebook. Has that kind of, your role has been kind of growing as your seeds have been growing? Is that kind of what you see?
Yeah, I'm not a member of as many groups on Facebook as I am forums, but I'm probably in more than 500 groups on Facebook. And hopefully Facebook will get to the point where I can monitor conversations a little bit better, because mostly what I deal with on Facebook right now is people in buying and selling in classified groups that are selling Optima batteries, and they're really misrepresenting them. And sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's accidental. I can tell by looking at the label sometimes how old a battery is, and they're trying to present a battery as a brand new battery when I can look at that label and say, that's a 10-year-old battery, or they'll say, it comes with a full warranty, and the warranty is only good for the original purchaser. And so sometimes I'll jump in there and try to help people, because I know on the forums a lot of the situations that I ran into were people who bought used batteries, and they didn't know what the service history or application history was on the battery that they bought. And so their expectations were unrealistically high because they bought a used product, and then it didn't live up to those expectations. And so now on Facebook, I can try to head some of that off at the pass with some of these classified groups.
Okay. And so tell us something you're doing right now that has you fired up. I mean, you guys got a lot of things going on. What has you fired up?
I really like our Search for the Ultimate Streetcar series. It's unique, and it's a niche that nobody knew existed. And I know you guys have been a part of it, but it's a rare opportunity. And as we see the importance of exposure for people who want sponsorships and for companies who want visibility, the series really gives them some unique opportunities that are hard to come by, even at the professional level, in terms of racing experiences, because all of these events are nationally televised. They're all on MAV TV, and people are saying, well, I can't get MAV TV. Well, MAV TV is digital now. Anybody with an internet connection can watch these shows on MAV TV Racing's. They've got their own website, and they're on Roku. And
that's fairly recent too, right? Because it has not been that way for a while, huh?
Yeah, that rolled out this year, and it was one of those things that's been on the horizon, and we've known about it for a while, and the timeline kept getting pushed back, but there's going to be more channels that are rolling out as the year goes on, and I'm really excited about that. But as the magazines, content will always be in demand. People will always want to consume stories and photos and videos. It's just the delivery method changes, and there'll always probably be some print magazines, but there'll be less than there were 10 years ago, and it's shifting. So, and the thing that's nice about the shift that we're seeing to digital is that it's much easier to measure. A magazine can tell you what their subscriber base is, and they can estimate how many people will read a copy of a magazine. But when you get into the digital space, not only do you know how many people watched your video, you know how much time they spent watching your video, you know when they stopped watching your video, you know how many commented about it, how many shared it with their friends, and all kinds of deeper analytics that really give companies tangible metrics that they can look at, instead of the Nielsen ratings where 0.1% of the households get a little booklet to fill out by hand, and then they estimate ratings based on that in a handful of set-top boxes. The digital space really gives companies a much better measurement tool. It's not the end-all be-all, because there's still brand awareness that you have to do in traditional marketing and promotional areas that are going to always be hard to measure. The value of sponsoring a race, or putting your name on a billboard or in a magazine ad, or on radio or TV ads that you can't measure as easily as a lot of the digital stuff, but there's certainly still a lot of value in that. It's just you've got to trust a little bit that the marketing is doing its job when you choose to focus your resources in some of those other areas.
And so this kind of takes us perfectly into our topic, which is obviously social media and marketing. And you've kind of already described your role as a social media guy for Optima Batteries, but kind of give us like some detailed information on like what you do. So your role is to actually frequent forums and answer questions and brand awareness, and then you attend events, and kind of what do you do? Give us your role.
Well, it's kind of everything within the digital space, and it really started out heavily in the forums, but as you've indicated, I think a lot of the conversations are shifting again, and they're moving into Facebook, and not necessarily in groups. Sometimes it's just in timelines, and people are having really rich and descriptive conversations in their timelines just amongst their close friends, which you're never going to be able to keep up with that, but just expanding the reach and the presence of Optima digitally. And I'm kind of that one-man band who's blowing a kazoo and kicking a bass drum while he's strumming on a guitar, because it's not just the social media platforms. It's also the website and authoring the blog and trying to put content out there, not just for the sake of putting content out that's going to be visible in search, but content relating to our products or batteries in general or chargers in general that somebody is going to find useful, even if they don't know that they're looking specifically for Optima products or answers to questions about our products. I want them to find me on Google, and I want Optima to be a trusted voice for people who have those types of questions and a resource that they can come to and say, well, this makes sense because I've read other stuff from these people, and it just makes common sense. It's not like they're speaking some kind of weird language about cam profiles that only smart engineering guys will understand. It's just basic stuff. If you're not going to use your battery for a long time, take care of it.
Okay. And so what are the different platforms you're using? I've seen you on all kinds of different ones. The latest one that I saw you at SEMA was a Periscope, right? What are the different platforms you use?
So obviously Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, because everybody's on those, Instagram, Google+, Tumblr, Periscope, and we kind of, as new ones pop up like Snapchat, we lock it down early, so we at least have our presence there if we want to go in that direction, and maybe it'll pick up. Like Pinterest was really strong for a while, and ever since they put their algorithm in, and we were a seed account for a while, so we've got, I don't know, almost maybe 9,000 followers on Pinterest, which is decent, I guess. I spent a lot of time there, growing that audience and putting rich and engaging content there for people to check out. But as that's kind of subsided, I've kind of shifted the focus and moved in other areas. And I do more on Instagram now because Instagram didn't exist several years ago. And even like what I do on Facebook has changed because Facebook's changed their algorithm, and it's basically a pay-to-play platform, which is bang for the buck wise, really, really good. But you have to spend more time understanding your potential audience. And like we're running a promotion right now for a contest to go on a fishing trip with our Bassmaster Classic sponsored angler Edwin Evers, who just won the Bassmaster last weekend. And you can win a trip to go fishing with him and win a boat too, which is like a $40,000 prize. But when I target them and promote that on Facebook, it's like not the polar opposite audience of a Search for the Ultimate Streetcar audience, but it's a very different group of people. And so there's, I'll never proclaim to be a guru or a ninja or anything like that in social media, because there's so much learning that goes on all the time. And so I'm always learning, I'm always experimenting and trying different things with different audiences and kind of lurking in the shadows in the automotive aftermarket group on Facebook and trying to steal everybody's good ideas and see if they work.
And
if they do,
there is a bunch of marketing people in that group too.
yeah, there is. And so I'll ask a lot of questions, but I usually won't offer up much in the way of information because there's so few definites for me. Like I know this to be the case, or this. I can say what's been effective for us in the past, but that might not be the same for us tomorrow or next week or next year.
Yeah, so your role really has to adapt very quickly because all these algorithms do change that Facebook uses for searching and for showing the content to your I guess fans. So all that stuff changes all the time. So you're constantly having to evolve, huh?
Yeah, but at the same time, the goal is always the same. And so every once in a while, we'll have an agency person come to us and say, "Well, what's your overall goal here?" And at the end of the day, we want to sell car batteries. We want to sell car batteries. We want to sell battery chargers. And so that kind of keeps us grounded and focused in the right direction. Because everything I do, it's not just because I want to put cool looking stuff out on the internet. I want to get people into our funnel and get them all the way down to the bottom and get them to convert and get them to purchase one of our products, or if they like it, purchase another one, or if they don't, maybe give them some pause to reconsider and think about our products a little more.
So do you find any of the methods of social media better than others?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's certain ones, and I guess going back to the end goal, you want to sell products. It's not just social media, but the internet in general. Facebook does gangbusters. Facebook knows more about people on Facebook than the CIA knows about people on Facebook, and other platforms don't do as well. And I see other companies advertising and spending dollars there. And that's why I'm so intrigued by like the automotive aftermarket group, because if somebody's spending 5 figures on another platform that I've evaluated myself and couldn't see the value in it, I want to know why they see the value in it, because I couldn't, in my mind, justify it or make it work. So I want to know if they're taking a different approach to it that makes sense and would make me say, I need to reconsider this, because I think what they're doing actually makes sense, and I could see a pathway for us to be successful in conversions if I took another look at this place.
Interesting. And so, like, Periscope was one of them. I saw you, that's basically a live feed from your phone. So you were walking around SEMA, I guess, live feeding what you were seeing, essentially, right? And that one is that kind of just an experiment that you tried?
Well, it's like Vine and all these other things. It pops up, and you want to have a presence there, and it's not just enough to always just have your name there and lock up the account. You want to put something out there. Like years ago when I got onto Instagram, I didn't do much there, but I put a dozen or more pictures on Instagram and just didn't give it much thought. And I'd check in on it once a month or so, and then suddenly it's like, we've got 600 people following us on here, and I haven't done anything to draw them in. And people are engaging with this platform at a much higher rate than they are with the other ones that I'm actually spending time on. So that's kind of the tipping point for me, where I see that and I start shifting more of my energy over there. So, I want to give something like Periscope a chance, and I want to provide content that people might find interesting and engaging. So I will walk around SEMA or PRI and, give people a real-time look at what's going on in those places. And I do that personally as well on Periscope, because I'm always trying to find out what interests people. And I happened to be in New York when the blizzard hit and went down to Times Square because it was just a couple blocks from my hotel. I had 300 people watching me walk around Times Square on Periscope, and like hundreds more on a replay. I'd never gotten anything like that except for the awards ceremony at the Ultimate Streetcar Invitational in Las Vegas. I never got live audiences that big, but you just don't know unless you try, and it doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of your time to try. So as long as I'm not having to write a big check, why not try it? And I've actually enjoyed Periscope enough and gotten enough of a response from it, and I know that a lot of the content that people want to see is moving in the direction of video. That when I go to New York, I go visit my my favorite store in New York, which is B&H Photo Video, and I've stepped up my game a little bit and bought a couple more items there that I think will deliver a better experience for the viewers and the folks who look at our photos and videos online, and hopefully be better for our brand in the long run. But it's always about trying to find the next cool thing and not necessarily being the first to exploit it, but being one of the better ones, if not the best.
Okay, cool. So kind of walk us through building a marketing campaign. I mean, you obviously have done this a whole bunch of times, but how do we get started, and what can like shops and other people who are in this industry do to, create a campaign, set the goals, what should they be doing and what should they be looking for?
Well, and then this is where we get into the part where it's like you're interviewing a magician, asking him how he does all his tricks. It's not like I'm a one-man band for Optima and I do all the marketing. Cam Douglas has great vision for our company and has pushed us in directions that made us really question why we were doing things initially. But then as they started to unfold, it made a lot of sense. And it's like, wow, he's kind of visionary in that regard and being able to see ahead of the curve. And he's a very tech-oriented guy and always likes the newest, latest tech gadget things. And he understands the demographics of his market very well, because a sport compact guy is a very different consumer than a pro touring guy. And that guy is a very different consumer than somebody who likes to go, do Ultra 4 racing. And that person's very different than somebody who likes to fish for walleye. And all those people are our customers. And so when we do marketing exercises, it's our product is so broadly used that we have to kind of take that all into consideration. So when you look at our latest commercials, we have Art Twasson's lowrider, which one of those hydraulic cars that bounces 10 feet in the air. We've got that in there. We have Chris Jacobs' C5 Corvette. We've got Lucas Murphy's Ultra 4 truck running at Line Mountain, and we have Edwin Evers tearing around a lake catching fish in Wisconsin, because that's kind of who we go after. We go after a little bit of everything and everybody, and we're not going to be able to cover every segment in every marketing initiative that we do, but we do try to, for something that has so much of our resources behind it, like a TV commercial, we do try to cover more than one base, because it's just such a big expense to limit it to just the lowrider community or just the bass fishing community. We want to try to target as many as we can. And then we're involved in so many different like on-site activation activities, from Power Tour to Search for the Ultimate Streetcar and Chump Car World Series and Cruising the Coast, and even events that aren't necessarily specific to people who use our batteries. Like we have a presence every year at the EAA Air Venture, which used to be called the Fly-In up in Oshkosh, the largest air show in the world. And our batteries are not certified for use in airplanes, but at the same time, we know our consumers well enough to know that all the people that are flying into that show, if they can afford a plane, they probably have a nice car at home. They might have a boat or two or three or four, and a lot of them. The first year we went there, we sold out of our Blue Top RV batteries like within hours, because there are thousands of motorhomes and RVs up there, and so that from every year since we've continued to sell out our Blue Top batteries, but we've ordered more and more, so now we're filling up our truck with Blue Tops as we go up there, because we know we're going to sell a bunch at that show. But even though they're not specifically there like a car show would be with a bunch of people who have our products in their vehicles at the show, it's a bunch of our consumers. Their mode of getting there by plane is a little bit different than some of the other ones, but it's one of our more successful shows.
Okay. So you are really focusing some of these ads specifically for a targeted group of people, and then you don't have like one ad to advertise to everybody. You're focusing it down to a specific group.
Well, for our TV commercials, we don't really have the last go around we had specific commercials for Blue Top, Yellow Top, Red Top. This time we kind of combine them all into one. But our print ads are a little bit different, and our digital ads are a little bit different. We have like a lot of companies, we have brand ambassadors in specific segments. Like for us, it may seem really nichey, but lifted truck is a big deal for us. And you go out to SEMA, you see a bunch of lifted trucks, a bunch of them will never go off of concrete or asphalt, but people still like them. And we've got a guy, Daryl Reese, who's got a huge following on Instagram, Mopar Daryl, and he's got a lifted Cummins Dodge crew cab that's just a really cool truck. And he's really well known within that segment of the community. And so when we're advertising in certain spaces, whether it's digitally or in print, he's the guy we want to be the face of our brand in those areas because he carries a lot of credibility. We want to associate with him. But at the same time, we may shift to Mary Posey and her second-gen Camaro if we're going to be in Super Chevy or Chevy High Performance magazine because, she's the SCCA national champion and just has been beaten up on guys for decades on autocrosses all over the country.
I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah. So we find people who are using our products or fond of our products and are at kind of the pinnacle of their specific niche and see if we can form a partnership. And it's not dissimilar from what, like I said, a lot of other brands do with people they sponsor. And in some ways, it's kind of like working your way up the sponsorship ladder. If you've got a vehicle that's going to SEMA, come see us in the Platinum lot, and we'll give you an Optima battery for free just because we know your car is going to end up at SEMA versus 1,000 people that send us a letter and claiming they're going to go to SEMA, and none of them ever do. But that level of support from us is different than what you see from our brand ambassadors that appear in our print ads. And then, when you move beyond that and you see a guy like Edwin Evers, who I still don't understand the economics of bass fishing, but it's huge. And I guess the barrier of entry is low because all you really need is a
fishing pole.
Stick with not even a fishing pole. You can have a stick with a line and a hook on the end of it, and now you're in the fishing. But that's his job. He just fishes. He's not a contractor by day. He doesn't have another job. He grows pecan trees on his property, but he's a fisherman, and that's all he does. And so he's very good at it. Obviously won the Bassmaster Classic, and he's won more than 10 Bassmaster tournaments, which is not an easy feat to do. But he's very good at it, and we obviously support him at a different level than we do with the people that are featured in some of our ads.
At PRI this year, there was a really interesting, it was an unfortunate incident, but you played an integral role in it. Our friend Jimmy Day had his not F-150, it was diesel Ford pickup truck got stolen out of the hotel. And that was on setup day, correct? Setup day?
Yes,
stuff?
I think it was Wednesday, maybe.
And Jimmy's, he's pretty, he's got a lot of friends on Facebook, and he posted the surveillance video of the truck being stolen. And, lots and lots of people shared it, and, people were looking out for it. But I think you were the one that, I guess, I'll let you take the story, but you kind of were the one that got the truck back, right? So tell us how that happened.
Well, we didn't exactly get the truck back, which is a different story unto itself. I guess they're really busy with other crimes down there that are more important than Grand Theft Auto. But one of the things that we try to do as a brand to add value to the experience for our consumers is if somebody's car or truck gets stolen and they have an Optima battery in it and I find out about it, I'm going to push that out in our social media channels and try to help that person get their car or truck back. And I think the one before Jimmy was a Camaro that was down somewhere in Tennessee that had gotten stolen. And, just people post these things and I'll come across them because I'm always searching the interwebs for Optima conversations. And so somebody will mention, this was my 73 Camaro and it had a 350 and it had a red top and it was red with a primer trunk and that kind of thing. I'm like, well, I'll help this person out. And so if they have a picture, I'll take the picture. And then what I'll usually do, Facebook, again, being the awesome platform that it is, if they're in Bumble Stump, Tennessee, I'll put that picture on our Facebook wall and Facebook will promptly show it to about 24 people of the 60,000 that follow us because that's how they work now. And then I'll take it from there with a promoted post that targets a radius of 50 miles around Bumble Stump, Tennessee, and targets people who like second-gen Camaros. So it automatically zeroes in that group, and you're a Mitsubishi Evo guy, right? So when you're driving down the street, if you see a red Evo, which is like a unicorn, you take notice, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, when you target like that, you're not just targeting people who like Hot Rod Magazine or Chevrolet or something like that. You want to target a really specific group and get your potential audience down a little bit. And that's kind of what I did with Jimmy's truck. And I had a picture of his truck. It's a dually, but it's an extend cab. It's not a crew cab, which is a unique combination that you don't see very often. And I put it out there, and apparently there's so many trucks being stolen, diesel trucks being stolen in southern Indiana. There's a Facebook page for like stolen Ford diesel trucks in Indiana. It's got 10,000 people that like it or something like that. And the guy who runs that page kind of keeps his ear to the ground digitally and saw pictures of Jimmy's truck being sold by a guy on Facebook who I won't mention, but he's still out there presumably selling more used stolen truck parts. So if your truck gets stolen in southern Indiana, police know about this guy. They've got his name, all that stuff. But we basically found Jimmy's truck. They were selling the bed out of it within 24 hours of having it stolen. They'd taken it off already, and this guy's backyard had a bunch of crew cab beds in it. And so we found it right away and turned the information over to police. And I wouldn't say they've dropped the ball yet, but they haven't begun carrying it. And Jimmy's insurance company was great, and they came in and took care of him and understood, because it was a 6-liter, and kind of a weird truck. They understood how hard it is to find a truck like that, and they gave him enough in terms of a settlement that he was able to go out and get a suitable replacement. Because, to replace a truck, and it was a low-mile truck, it was like a 2000 something, and it had like 50, 60,000 miles on it. To go out and buy a 2013 truck that has 50 or 60,000 miles on it would be like, ridiculous amounts of money. So he was able to replace it with something comparable and moved on with his life, although the people that are stealing trucks in the Indianapolis area are still at it, although we at least proved out with his situation that they can be tracked down and found and identified through the help of Facebook.
And so that was basically a targeted ad through the Indianapolis area looking for people with Ford diesel trucks, essentially, is what you were doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you drill it down. And you don't do, all of Indiana, because somebody up in Gary probably is not going to be relevant to you. But people within that 50-mile radius of where the truck went missing might see it, not only because they're close, but because they have a specific interest in diesel, power stroke Ford trucks.
So can you give any other performance shops and businesses some advice on their social media presence, just kind of to closing this little topic out?
Sure. I think and I have a lot of friends that have smaller businesses, and they're always kind of picking my brain.
Myself included.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. And you and I have talked about mailing lists and how important they are. But whether you're at a show or whether you have people come in your brick and mortar location, you want to get as much information on them as you can, because they're interested enough in your company or your business to actually spend some of their time. And when you look at how much time people spend on stuff like watching videos, it's measured in seconds. It's not minutes. So for somebody to take a few minutes of their time and look at your display at a show, or take a few minutes of your time or even longer and come into your shop and ask you questions, that's huge. These people are like halfway down your funnel. And so, Facebook, one of the great things it does is it not only allows you to retarget them if you get some of their personal information that they can identify, but it can also create lookalike audiences that resemble this person. And so, Bob Smith is 35 years old and he likes Ford trucks, and he's within 50 miles of my location. Okay, Facebook, here's his information. Can you find me an audience of 500 Bob Smiths, because I want to sell them my diesel parts? And then Facebook can kind of help you with that. And so that's, bang for the buck wise in terms of social media. That's why I think it's such a phenomenal platform, because they have so much data and information that they can share. Even if you just give them a little, sliver of evidence, they can put together a whole scene of people that you want to target.
And it should be understood that Facebook now, you do need to spend some money doing it. It doesn't take a lot, but it takes some money to do this.
It does. It does. And when you evaluate your overall budget and how you're marketing and promoting yourself, how do you measure how many calls you get from the yellow pages? That's hard, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Because you have to take it from the flip side of that. I'm a tire consumer. I just bought 4 BF Goodrich tires. I didn't go to my phone book to look up these tires. I hopped online and I wanted a specific size, and I didn't want to have to go pick them up somewhere. I wanted them sent to my door, and Tire Rack sent them to my door. And so you have to put yourself in your potential consumer's shoes and see how you're looking for things, and then try to replicate that for your own customers. And so if you spend a lot of time on Facebook and you found some really cool things on there, think about that experience and think about how you can translate that into your own business.
So let's go back to yourself some more. What's something you struggle with in business, and how do you deal with it?
This is a great question, and it's one that I ask of a lot of other people because I think a lot of us are still searching for answers. Here we are, it's 11:38 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and you and I are talking about business. And that's like my number one struggle, is how do I balance my family time with my business time? Because the internet never sleeps. Social media never stops. And even though everybody works a 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday, with what I do, a lot of it happens on the weekends because that's when the events happen. That's when the conversations happen online. And so you don't really get that Saturday and Sunday off because you still have to kind of keep an eye on things out of the corner of your eye. Even when you're heading to your kids' play or something like that, you're going to hop on before and then hop on right after. And so that's the biggest struggle I have, is how I balance the time I spend doing business stuff versus how I balance the time I spend with my family. And I got 4 kids in high school, and my son's a senior, and he's going to be gone in a couple of months to college, and then I'm never going to see him. So the clock is ticking for me, and I need to always do a better job of balancing the time I spend on work versus the time I spend with my family.
I think everybody listening to this can relate to that. Shop owners are it's brutal. So,
and and that gets me on another point that people cut their nose off to spite their face. You see all these self-righteous people who brag about, I did it myself. This was built, not bought. The people who build stuff for other people are the backbone of the automotive aftermarket. If there weren't shops building cars for people, the automotive aftermarket would be a shell of what it is now. And you can brag all you want about, I did all the work myself, unless you press them and ask them how they got all the upholstery done, and they said, well, they sent that off to somebody else. And you ask them how amazing the paint looked for being done in their garage, and they admit that somebody else painted it. And then you ask them, where they got the background to put together an engine. They bought a crate motor from somebody. They didn't actually assemble it themselves. They just kind of put all the pieces together is what they really meant while they're trying to toot their own horn. But the bottom line is, even the people that are doing that in their garages, they're doing that at the expense of time they could spend somewhere else. Uh-huh. And everybody's time has value. And so I got into this discussion with a guy years and years ago who kind of scoffed at me for buying a Lingenfelter engine. And he knew I played in the NBA. And I said, well, when you break it down by an hour, I don't have a background in mechanics, so I'd have to go to school. And then even if I got the knowledge, then I'd have to get the tools. And so I'd have to spend a bunch on the tools. And then, where am I? I'm a guy who's got a bunch of knowledge, got a bunch of tools, which is really cool. And I can do that over and over again because it's not just like a one-time thing. But in the process, I haven't spent time with my wife. I haven't spent time with my kids. And sometimes people are lucky enough, like the Farrington family, they do it all together. Mom and Pop Farrington and Sam, they're always wrenching on their Chevelles together, and it's a great family bonding experience for them. You know what my wife likes? Not horsepower. She likes horses. So she wants to go do horse things, and my kids like music, and they want to go do music things. And so I'm not in a position where I have a family that really has the same passion that I do for cars. So everything I do, even if I'm just swapping out my winter wheels for my summer wheels on my truck, I'm not doing that with my kids. And that's time that I'm not spending with my kids. So if I run and get an oil change and have them swap out my wheels and tires at the same time, then I'm killing two birds with one stone, and I'm spending that extra time with my family instead of, okay, I've got all the oil emptied out of my truck into a bunch of gallon jugs that I now have to go run out to the recycling center. It just, there's a value in time that I think people lose sight of sometimes, and I'm glad there's so many people in the automotive aftermarket that are there to handle that for people who would rather spend that time with their family or rather spend that time doing something else.
That's a good realization. I think everybody should kind of take that to heart too. I mean, family and friends is more important than getting the car done. So just, think about it a little bit. But
yeah.
So do you have a 1 year and a 5 year goal with Optima?
Yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. Sell more batteries than we did the year before. And then in 5 years, sell more batteries than we did before that. And it really, we can say we want to come up with new products or we want to get a certain percentage of the market. We want to sell more because, we're owned by a publicly traded corporation and shareholders, and everybody needs to make money, and shareholders expect them to make more money than they did the year before, regardless of whether the market's doing well or not. And so that's what it comes down to for us. There's not a number attached to it for me in terms of how many people I want to like my Facebook page. I could care less. Facebook's so good with targeting now. I don't care if 5 people like my Facebook page. I can reach the audience that I want to get to. I just want to sell more batteries, and I want people to be happy with the products. And if they have questions or concerns about them, I want to be able to reach them and address those issues for them.
Cool. And we like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest an action item that our listeners can take to improve their situation?
Spend more time with their family.
Good one.
And it's not specific to their business, but a happy wife is a happy life. Don't ignore your wife like I'm doing right now, because as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to go upstairs and spend more time with my wife and kids and make time for your family, because it's really important.
Yeah, we're going to the racetrack right after this. We get to go support some race cars, and they're going to come watch. So,
oh, good.
Okay, so we got the quick answer section here. So these are just kind of short answers. Just
sure.
Just say something quick. Tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
Game-changing product I've seen in the last year. I feel like Periscope is. It's really, really interesting. I follow the Impractical Jokers, and they have a much bigger following than we do. But even like the folks at Hot Rod, when they're in their commuting in their muscle car, that's a big audience, and it's a big captive audience, and they want to hear what you have to say, and they want to see what you're seeing, and so it's changing the way that we think about how we want to present our brand to people and how we want to make ourselves recognizable to them. And it's become a focus for us in the last couple of years to do more video, and things like Periscope are at the top of the list for that.
Okay. And what software are you using daily?
That's another good question. I use OpenOffice because I'm kind of a creature of habit, and so I don't like getting all the new Microsoft Office suite products. I like that OpenOffice is free. I can put it on whatever computer I get. I use Digital Photo Professional that came with my Canon camera because I'm just a hack with a camera. I'm not that good. I'm not good enough to waste money on Photoshop. And again, the time value of things, it's going to take me forever to learn how to use Photoshop and be really good at it. And at that point, is my end result that much far ahead of where I'm at now? Maybe not. So I use that a lot. I use AVS Video Editor a lot, and I use Faststone Photo Resizer, which helps me watermark everything, either with our logo or...
Ooh, what was that one called?
URL. Faststone Photo Resizer.
Okay.
And it's free, which is big for me, even though Optima would pay for that kind of stuff. It's just whether you put something on Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook or somewhere, tag it. So leave people digital breadcrumbs so they know how to come back to your company or your business. Because how many times have you seen just a crazy looking car or something wacky or wild or amazing in your Facebook news feed, and there's not much information on it. You wonder where it came from, or you saw it on Speed Society and they plucked it from somewhere, or Bang Shift repurposed it from a YouTube video that, the title of the YouTube video is the name of the video file, and, the guy's name is Gnome Warrior 872. You got no information on it. So that's, I'm really big on leaving breadcrumbs for people.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. I didn't learn when I had the chance. So our Pikes Peak crash was not watermarked anywhere, and that thing's been stolen all over the internet.
Yeah, it did, and you guys know from that experience, it's one of the old saying: there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's a wreck, and it's horrible, it's terrible that it happened. And fortunately, nobody got seriously hurt in it. But wow, do people know about you guys now? Because even if they don't know who Evolution Dynamics is, they've seen that. They've seen it in their Facebook feed, and they will continue to see it in their feed. Not like just when Pikes Peak is rolling around, but it just pops up randomly from time to time. People are like, check this out.
Just about every week, it seems like.
Yeah.
So, okay. And what's your favorite app that you use daily?
It's not really related to work, but I like my little health app on my iPhone that tells me how many steps I've taken. Because again, it goes back to balancing things in life and balancing family time and work time. The third prong for that for me is balancing my own physical health, because I could sit down in front of my laptop for 15 hours, and at the end of that 15 hours, I could still say, you know what, I could easily put in another 15 hours worth of work here. And even if I make time to spend time with my family, that's not making time to spend time taking care of my body. And you can get into really bad habits with eating and being sedentary. And, as a former professional athlete who did nothing but work out for a living, you don't necessarily, some guys want to do that for the rest of their lives. I'm not one of them, but I want to stay in shape. And again, I'm a cheapskate, so I don't want to have to keep buying new pants because I'm putting weight on. So I have to find time to work out. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm on the road is, I'm checking my steps. And I guess a lot of people have a goal of 10,000 a day, which seems like a lot for me. I started last year doing this. I was at 5,000. I'm at 5,500 this year. And I'll hop on the Stairmaster or just make a point of it. Like I was a King of the Hammers. I got 17,000 steps in one day. Like,
SEMA's a big one for us too.
Yeah, SEMA's a big one. But when you look at that steps that you've taken care of things physically for yourself that day, if you've hit that number that you've set for yourself. And there's been days when I'm at like 1,200. It's like, I have to find 30 minutes to get on the Stairmaster because that's just not acceptable. So it's a great tool for me to help balance that part of my life.
Cool. And do you have a favorite shop tool?
You mean like in a garage shop tool?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it could be something that you use for your work as well. So,
I'd like to say it's my Optima digital chargers, digital 1200 charger and maintainer, but it's not. I mean, I like it a lot and I use it a lot, but Autometer makes a great portable load tester that I really like using, because that's where you really get down to it and know the health of a battery. And I use that all the time. I've got two of them. I carry one in my truck, and I've used it out in parking lots before. I've used it on Power Tour before. And you can jumpstart somebody, and then you jumpstart them, and you can measure voltage and actually digital voltmeters, another one I really, really like. You measure that alternator output, and their alternator's hovering at 11.8, and you're saying, your battery is supposed to be fully charged at 12.6, so if your alternator is only delivering 11.8, how are you ever going to get there? and so it's, and it's a voltmeter is a $10 tool, and it can save you hundreds of dollars worth of headaches.
Cool. And what are you driving right now?
I have a 2003 Ford Excursion. If people want to Google, I think it's 400K Excursion, because my goal was to get 400,000 miles out of it. I'm at like 260 right now, and it's a 6-liter diesel. I had the whole exterior sprayed with Rhino liner because I live in Wisconsin, and the paint was starting to crack on the hood and the roof. And I was just going to spray the roof because I put surfboards up there a lot, and then I wouldn't have to worry about really wrecking the roof and getting it all rusty. I don't care about scratching it. And then it occurred to me, if I could spray the roof, why don't I just spray the whole thing? And so I did. And that was 5 years ago I did that. and it's holding up pretty well. I had it sprayed blue, but it really turned out more of a blackish greenish because I don't think they had the gun cleaned properly. I don't really care as long as it all kind of looks the same. And I ended up getting new bumpers and had the whole lower rockers resprayed in blue again, which is a different shade than the rest of the truck. And it faded, which I expected it to. I didn't want to spend the extra money on the liner that doesn't fade because, you know, I'm just trying to hang on to this truck until I can move to Texas where you guys are and not have to deal with salt anymore.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's holding together, but I got something going on with my torque converter, I think. It's especially in the cold weather, it's not good. And I've had the transmission replaced, so I'm hoping it's not that. But that's my winter driver. I've got a 2013 Ford Flex EcoBoost, which is awesome. People say the station wagon's dead, but they haven't driven one of those. Those are a lot of fun. So glad I have that. And then I still have my 92 Chevy pickup. And then I have Randy Johnson at D&Z Customs is going to build a 69 Mercury Cyclone for me with a Lingenfelter LS7. So all the purists can start hating me as of now.
Okay, and what do you see the future of automotive performance as?
Electric, believe it or not, long term. You know, internal combustion will be around forever, but the really cool stuff will be electric because when they get the batteries figured out in terms of having enough power to make it and being able to recharge it, just like you'd fill up a tank with gasoline, being able to fill up your car with energy. When they get that stuff figured out, the torque and the performance of an electric motor versus a gasoline engine is going to be ridiculous. And you can already see the people who have the Teslas and those cars are, you know, they love them. They think they're really cool and they're decent performers, but it's just, you know, we're at the Henry Ford stages of electric cars right now, and it's just going to be phenomenal.
And I've got to ask, and maybe you can't answer it, but are you guys involved in battery development for electric cars?
Johnson Controls, our parent corporation, has always had a hand in it. They're, you know, one of the biggest battery producers of any kind, automotively speaking, in the world, and so they're always involved in that stuff. And I can't get into too many specifics on future projects with what they're doing, but you can believe if they're involved in it now, even on the lead acid side, they're looking for ways to stay involved with it forever.
Awesome. Okay, and how do we connect with you and your company?
You can find us anywhere that you hang out on social media. Optima Batteries is usually the name of our account on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Pinterest and all that stuff. And then obviously our website's optimabatteries.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for taking some time talking with us. But yeah, we really appreciate your time. And I got a good bunch of clips out of this, and I'm going to post them on our Do It for a Living webpage because I think some of the stuff that you're using is sounds pretty cool. So we'll check it out.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now.